So we have a lot to catch up on. I was faced with some technical difficulties, which if you know me, you know I'm not good with technology, so that delayed me quite a bit. I have been seeing everyone do the mid-year freakout tag, and it asks questions like best book of the year, how your reading year's going, things like that. I don't want to do the full tag just because I have not read that much this year, so I want to give you today a mid-year check-in, just see where I'm at, and also a reading wrap-up of every book I've been able to read this year so far, which grand total, drumroll please, 10 books. So I am not going to be hard on myself. I set my goal as 15 books this just like I did last year, because last year was a hard year. For those of you who don't know, my grandfather he passed away from cancer. So I knew that I wouldn't be reading as much, or at least I figured I wasn't. Last year was a big surprise for me because I did end up reading quite a bit for myself. This year, I'm definitely going at a slower pace. Grief comes and goes in waves. And it's just life. It's just life. And 2026 has definitely been an interesting year for me. So I hope that it's been a good year for you so far. If not, I hope that the rest of the year looks up for you and me both. And the second part of this will just be, or no, I already said that, right? Yeah, mid-year check-in and also just an overall reading wrap-up of everything I've been able to read so far. I do apologize again for my absence. Some videos you can look forward to. I am currently filming a reading vlog where I read Arthurian reimagining, so that's very exciting. I have 2 that I'm reading in that vlog, so stay tuned for that if that's something that interests you. Another video to look forward to, especially if you subscribe because of my medieval reading list vlog. Sorry, not vlog, goodness gracious, you can tell I haven't filmed in a while. My medieval reading list, where I just went through really quickly some books that I want to read from the Middle Ages, a long span of time, of course, so I'm not reading everything. I don't even know everything from that time period, but I did list off some books in that. If you subscribed to me from that video, I will be giving an update video, and I'm super excited for that. I will give some more background. It'll be a lot longer than the video that I posted originally was. So if you subscribe for that, please stay tuned. I will get that video out soon. I'm hoping that I fixed the issue. It was storage. It was my first corrupted video. Definitely an interesting experience. So if you're still here, thank you so much. And let's get into the video. I did already mention this, that I've read 10 books so far this year. It has been a slower reading year. My attention span, I considered have you all seen the brick where you can put it on anything, it'll cancel out any apps that you want, and the only way to get access to those apps again is if you go to wherever you place the brick and you physically scan it. And I considered getting that, but for me, honestly, I don't feel like I have a social media addiction. YouTube for me is like TV, so in a way I have a TV addiction. But I don't find myself mindlessly scrolling. I'm very grateful that I never got TikTok, because I know how I am and I know that I would be scrolling relentlessly on TikTok. So my focus wasn't really there for the first part of this year. I definitely feel rejuvenated. I definitely feel ready to take on the last half of the year. But let's dive into what I was able to read and my thoughts on those books. We've definitely got some interesting ones in here, ones that I didn't intend to picking up, ones that carried over from last year. Speaking of which, the first book I completed was Rivals by Jilly Cooper. This is what's called a bonkbuster, basically a raunchy blockbuster in book form. It's like an 80s soap opera, and there is a show airing currently on Disney Plus and Hulu by the same name, Rivals, that follows this book. I love the show so much. It's got Aidan Turner in it, and he does such a great job acting as Declan O'Hara, who is kind of our hero, kind of not really. And it's following these wealthy people in the Cotswolds, the British countryside, as they work in the entertainment industry, and they are trying to retain the franchise for their area so that they can continue making content. The franchise we're following is led by a man named Tony Battingham, and in the show he's played by David Tennant. So excellent acting all around, and that's what introduced me to this story. I wanted to pick up the book because, for those of you who know, the first season ends on a big cliffhanger. And I think a lot of people picked up the book because of that. You want to see what happens next. And I really loved reading the book, though I will say it's very much the 80s, politics. These wealthy people give off conservative, though I don't know if in England you would say conservative, or I should probably research that, but in American terms, like conservative vibes. So keep that in mind. Also, every trigger warning you can think of, I would say, is in this book as well. Given that it takes place in the entertainment industry, there is unfortunately a lot of workplace harassment, women not getting, they don't get equal treatment, of course. The aspects that I love, though, are it's so quick to read, you don't want to put it down. The characters, it's just so fascinating to follow them. Sometimes you root for them, sometimes you hate them, and you don't understand why they're doing what they do. I don't believe Jilly Cooper ever called herself a feminist, but I do feel there are feminist undertones there, especially with Cameron, who is she's a woman from New York brought over to help revitalize the franchise, and she's very independent. So overall, I really enjoyed it, and it gave me a book hangover, which I haven't had in a while. So I can't say I didn't like it, because even though it does have its faults, I really, really loved it. But I settled on a 4 out of 5 stars. I do want to pause here to talk about star ratings. As part of the mid-year check-in, I considered not doing star ratings this year. I've always struggled with them because sometimes I give a book 4 stars and it sticks with me longer than some of the books I give 5 stars do. So I considered not doing it at all and just talking about my thoughts. As someone who is reviewing books, I decided to do what I always do, which is give it the rating that I feel it deserves by the time I finish the book. And for me, I go off of enjoyment. So if the book is a slog, or if it has content that really upsets me or I think is handled poorly, that will lower my rating. If I loved it, if I couldn't put it down, that will boost the rating, of course. So I am sticking with rating my books with star ratings based on my enjoyment. Next book I read is a graphic novel that was so emotional, When Stars Are Scattered. And this book it's a novel, but it's based on a real man's life, Omar's life, and it made me cry. The refugees, there was war in their homeland, and Omar and his brother is having seizures. It's a horrible situation. Getting water, having access to anything really relies on the UN, and the lines take forever. The art style was beautiful, just the night, the stars, the message, and I loved reading. It's so heartfelt, it's so beautiful. It brings a lot of things to your attention, especially if you don't know anything about the subject. I love the ending. I love to read the notes now. Maybe that means I'm older, I don't know. But I love that he continues in his activism. He brings books over to refugees, school, make sure they're getting educated, and I loved it. So for that one, I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I guess I technically could have done the mid-year freakout tag, because I believe a question is a book that made you cry, and I thought I didn't have one, but looking at my list here, I did, and it was When Stars Are Scattered, so I highly recommend that. Again, a graphic novel, it won't take you long to read. It's so impactful. Highly recommend. Next, I read an ebook that I was not planning to read called Nightlife, and this is by Peter David, I believe. For this video, I will just be, when I edit back, I'll be putting the pictures for you, of course, but by Peter David. And the reason why I found this is because I loved the game Fable, and I was considering playing it again. I ended up just watching a playthrough on YouTube, which has been so fun. That's something I've really enjoyed this year, is watching playthroughs of video games. I also, sorry not to get on a tangent here, but I also watched Prince of Persia, Sands of Time playthrough, loved it. That was also a game from my childhood that was so hard for me to beat. But back to Fable. This author had written a book set in that universe called Fable, the Balverine Order, and I read it in a day. It was so compulsive, it was amazing. So I wondered if he had written anything else that I may be interested in, and I found a book based on Arthurian legends, which is perfect for me because I have loved in recent years reading Arthurian retellings, reimaginings, and going back to the original legends. So I picked this up. The interesting thing about this story is it was written decades ago, and follows current times, right? So it's contemporary. In this retelling, King Arthur he comes back and he's running to be mayor. He's running to be mayor of New York City. So definitely interesting, wacky. Merlin is trying to get him to be mayor, but Merlin is aging backwards in this retelling. He is aging backwards, and he knows about modern times, but also needs a little help. So that's where Gwen comes in, and I just like the portrayal of these characters. It is modern, you've got TVs, things like that. But as we all know, technology changed a lot between the 90s and the 2000s, 2010s, so on. So it did get an update, I believe. That was so fascinating to me. It does bother me a little bit not reading the original, because a part of me is wondering what was in that. But he was upfront and said that in the ebook that you can have access to, because it's not being published anymore, it is updated some things to match more contemporary times and less old things. So I just found that interesting, the history of the book itself. Now, the story was, like I said, wacky. It was a lot of fun, easy to read. It read like a script, and I believe Peter David wrote scripts or comics or something like that. I can definitely tell. It felt like I was watching a movie, an action movie around the length of an hour and 30 minutes, which is so specific, but that's how it felt. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't anything not super memorable. It, again, like an hour and 30-minute movie that I would watch sometimes when I don't know what else to watch. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It kept me occupied during January, and I enjoyed it, but did not love it. Now, the next book I read is a huge book. Lots of lore and mythology in this one. I filmed a whole video that I'm super proud of, my favorite video to date. I read The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, a book that I've been meaning to get to for years now because I love Middle-earth. I love The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I have since I was a child, so I finally read this. I listened to the audiobook read by Andy Serkis, who played as Gollum in the Peter Jackson adaptation. And I loved it. I love the background. You get background on all of the races and the conflict between elves, which is very dark, very dark. And I love the build-up. So now I have so much understanding. I could piece things together with how at the start of The Lord of the Rings, why things are the way they are, the beliefs that are held. And it just amazes me how well thought out Tolkien had Middle-earth. I love that. I can return to it anytime. That's something I appreciate too, because I'm not going to lie and say that I have everything memorized, that I feel like a scholar who, if you ask me a question, I could answer it immediately. I am not at that point yet. But my first read through, I really enjoyed it. And while I read it, I built the Shire Lego set, which was so amazing. And I don't know what it is with me. Sometimes audiobooks, I can't focus, but when I'm doing something with my hands, I've realized that I focus a lot more and retain the information. So if you are like me as well, I highly recommend doing that. Time will just go by so much faster also. So really, really enjoyed that. A book that carried over from last year that unfortunately was a disappointment is The Isle in the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri. This book started off so strong. I thought it was going to be a 5 out of 5 stars for me. But unfortunately, once I got to the middle, maybe, the pacing, I did not like the story, the plot, where it was going. And I also did not feel the connection between our two main characters, and which is a big deal because this was pitched as a standalone romantasy, I believe, or fantasy romance. However it was pitched, just know that the romance is a big part. This is following a knight and a witch in an isle of stories. So the place literally thrives off of stories. People who embody those stories, they're called incarnates, and they are reincarnated. So the stories will continue through people. It's reincarnation, which is a fascinating subject, of course. However, I just didn't feel like it worked. I love the talk of the criticism of colonialism and keeping stories and not taking over them. There is mystery where incarnates are being killed, so their stories are dying. again, tying into the overall commentary there, which I really loved, but I didn't feel it's a sapphic romance. I love a good sapphic romance. I'm always so disappointed when I find a sapphic romance where I don't feel the tension, because I'm a romance reader I want the buildup. I want the tension. I just didn't get it with this one. It felt insta-lovey, which their story, The Knight and the Witch, is supposed to be the knight goes to kill the witch, but there's like this love, they fall in love, but at the end they're doomed. They're doomed. So our two main characters in this take on the story, they want to break that cycle. But I didn't feel, again, it just felt insta-lovely. I didn't get, and it's not a spoiler because when you start the book, you do get the actual tell of the Knight and the Witch, which I loved. I did love that part. But I wish that story felt like the tell of the Knight and the Witch, where we get that slow progression. And I didn't feel that. So unfortunately, it was a disappointment for me. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, just because the beginning, super strong, ending, not strong at all. Next book I loved so much. This is definitely a new favorite for me. I also did a vlog on this one. It is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. It's a lovely portrait of life. It's set in the summertime. Now is a perfect time to read it if you haven't already. It's a novella, so it's super short, can be read in a day. Not to complain like everyone else in the world, it seems like, but this heat wave is awful. And now would be a great time to read it. When you're burning up, you could have a glass of lemonade and enjoy this book. We are following a man who is traumatized by World War I. He goes to uncover a medieval mural in a church in this small village in the British countryside. The details of the countryside are beautifully done. And that's another thing I could say about Jilly Cooper too, who wrote Rivals, is the descriptions of the British countryside are immaculate in that book, which I did not expect from a blockbuster, but they were excellent. So that's something I loved in A Month in the Country as well. So many beautiful quotes. The writing is simple but profound. And immediately after finishing the book, I watched the movie with Colin Firth, and Colin Firth is so young in it, and I loved it. A great movie as well. So, and the movie made me cry. The book didn't, but the movie definitely did. So highly recommend, and this is a book that I can return to. A rabbit hole that I went down the beginning of this year is watching the show Girls on HBO. This was airing when, honestly, I was too young to watch it. I believe I was in high school, but I had heard things about it. Then I forgot about it. Then there was the Lena Dunham controversy, and years have passed. I don't know what came over me, maybe being scared that my 20s would end in a couple years. So I finally watched it, and I was surprised by how great it was. The humor, the stories, how just vulnerable it was, and I loved it. All of the characters are unlikable, of course, but it was so great. Then Lena Dunham came out with her memoir, Famesick, which I got the audiobook for. I just had to read it after watching the show. The audiobook is read by Lena, and I'm not on a first name basis, sorry, Lena Dunham. As an audiobook narrator, she was kind of monotone, but I didn't mind because I was still in the mindset of the show, so it kind of felt like just watching more episodes, but she was the only one with dialogue. I enjoyed it. It definitely gave some insight into the controversies over the years. Do with that what you will. If you have any opinion on that, I do recommend listening to it. If you don't want to pay money for it, get it through your library. My library added it. I really enjoyed it. And just her talking about dealing with chronic illness, the stereotypes and prejudices that go along with that, really enjoyed. All right, another disappointment, Blood of Elves. This is the first novel in the Witcher series. I was so excited to pick it up, and I did enjoy the first. Also, another thing with this book, the chapters are forever long. So I believe the first chapter was like 50 pages. I may be wrong, but just got bored. I'm sorry. I usually love political intrigue, getting insight into that, but I felt a little bit confused, especially coming from the short stories where I felt like I could keep up. The stories are contained. I understand the difference between a short story and a full-length novel, of course, but when it came to this book, I just felt like it wasn't fully developed. And unfortunately, that really impacted my enjoyment of the story, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. At this point, I do not intend to continue the series. If you are a diehard Richard fan and you believe that I would love it if I continue, just give me a comment down below, because I do own more in the series. But I was so disappointed and I hate that. Thankfully though, I did have a good book come up with the Apothecary Diaries, book number 1. This is the light novel. So it's a novel instead of a manga, but there's still illustrations. It's still a quick read. I loved it. So cute. Mao Mao and Jinshi are our 2 main characters. Mao Mao is kidnapped and taken to the imperial city where she has to be a poison taster. Mao Mao is a funny character, and as a poison taster, you think it's the scariest job in the world, right? Because you could very well die, but she loves it, and she's built up this immunity, which makes it so hilarious. She'll always be the first one to try it, and other poison tasters will look at her like, what are you doing? I love that it's a period drama, period mystery. There's mysteries come up every chapter or so, and the anime is amazing too. I can't wait for another season of the anime. Love Mao Mao and Jinshi and their tension. Good. So good. I highly recommend if you are interested in anime or manga, The Apothecary Diaries. Excellent. That is all I had in my list for the year so far. I am happy with my reading. A couple of disappointments, unfortunately, but those are books that I've been wanting to read. The Isle in the Silver Sea was a highly anticipated release for me last year. Blood of Elves was, of course, on my list because I wanted to continue with the Witcher series. I enjoyed the show. And yeah, it was a big deal for me to actually give it a shot. So thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in my next few videos. I promise I'm working on them. Thank you so much again, and have a nice day. Bye.